Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Shakur, Ya Qudus, Ya Latif. O merciful one, O compassionate one, O one who is alone and unique, we prostrate before you. We give you our obeisance and we surrender to you. Your will should be the overriding will in this universe. And we ask that our will be overridden by your will and that we understand your will. We ask you to take away from us all of that which separates us from each other and which separates us from you. We ask you to grace us with your divine gracious qualities so that we may know the truth of existence and that we may understand reality. We ask you to take us to the place of hakikat, the place where man intertwines with God. Allow us to come into this space. Allow us to be among the ones who are counted as your friends. Allow us to be the ones who are close to you and who find favor with you. Allah, do this for us. We pray this from you. We ask this of you. We ask you to bring grace into this world, to bring peace into this world, and to bring a cure for all of the diseases in this world. Ameen, Ameen, Ya Rabbil Alameen. To be at peace is a great blessing. To be at peace means that we have somehow been able to transcend all of the difficulties within this world. We've been able to transcend praise and blame. We've been able to transcend the magnetisms and the hypnotisms and all the pulls and pushes of this world. We've been able to transcend all the things that bother us, all our difficulties within this world. To find peace means we've been able to transcend them. And to transcend them means that we have learned to give less credence to the world than we give to truth. That we've learned to give less credence to illusion than we give to reality. That we've learned not to be bothered by the everyday occurrences in this world and not to let them upset us and bring us into emotional turmoil. We've learned to bypass them. We've learned how to be content. We've learned how to be peaceful. We've learned how to sit still and be at one with existence. We've learned how to let what is, and what isn't. A man was once asked, how can you tell when a man is a friend of God? And the answer he gave was, when he sits in the sun, he doesn't want to sit in the shade. And when he sits in the shade, he doesn't want to sit in the sun. He's found contentment. We need to find contentment. We need to find contentment in the place that we are. Now, the world will constantly look to put you into a place of upheaval. The world will constantly look to get you into a place that is unsettled. And the world will then ask you to try and remedy that which is unsettled. the world will ask you to try and bring about a resolution to all that is unsettled. Well, those of us who've watched the world at all, and that's all of us, we've noticed, or we should have noticed, that there's always a certain level of unsettlement in this world. Now, the question for each of us is, are we going to attach ourselves to that which is unsettled, or are we going to find some way to transcend it, to become above it, and to not be involved in it, to find the peace that always exists around us, near us, next to us, and within us? You see, perfection always is in existence. The problem is our ability to see perfection. And a lot of the world, a lot of people in the world insist that perfection does not exist, and whatever their ideas are, the implementation of those ideas are necessary for perfection to exist. And this is what leads to so much turmoil. The insistence of people that their opinions not only are important, but that people have to act on them and bring about their existence. It is not God whose opinions bring about these difficulties. It is not God who brings about these situations of turmoil. It's man. And it's man because of his arrogance and his insistence that his opinions not only have validity, but have to be acted on, that bring about difficulty. The content man has learned how to let go of arrogance. The content man has learned how to let go of anger. The content man has learned how to let go of resentment. The content man has learned how to coordinate his being with Allah, as opposed to coordinating his being to the ups and downs of the world and going along with what's going on in the world. And this is a big lesson. The ability to concentrate and focus on God, as opposed to concentrating and focusing on the world, is a major movement within us. And if we can accomplish this movement, our life will change from being upwrought, from being difficult, from having tension, anxiety, and stress, to finding peace. But we have to want to do this. And to do it, we have to leave the illusory nature of existence. Fanaticism is always a big difficulty in existence. Fanatics are people who insist that their methodology, their ideas, their way of seeing things are so important that they will move them forward by any means necessary. And they will get you involved in moving them forward also. Part of fanaticism is this insistence on the fact that the fanatic knows exactly what is right. Bawa Muhaiyaddeen told us that all fanaticism is based in delusion. And from delusion comes fanaticism. Let's look at some examples. We have a disease that we call obsessive compulsive disorder. It makes people redo things over and over and over and over. They can't stop themselves. For instance, they might have to brush their teeth for 2 hours. They might have to lock their door at their apartment, and then when they go downstairs, come back up to make sure it's locked again and again and again and again and again. They may have to come back into their apartment to make sure their stove's turned off again and again and again and again. They have within them the problem that one strain of thought seems to occupy them, and they can't release themselves from it. This is the situation with the fanatic. He takes on one idea, and this idea doesn't leave his mind. Now, these fanatical ideas don't necessarily have to do with the entire world. Sometimes they have to do with relationships. Sometimes they have to do with hatred. Sometimes they have to do with just one person in your life. But it becomes a recurring thought that we can't relieve ourselves of. Well, the first thing that we need to know and we need to understand is that when we have these kinds of recurring thoughts, it's a disease. And it's a disease of the mind. And we need to understand how to get around it. We need to stop giving it the credence that we give it. Now, in issues that are broader, in political issues, for instance, people are constantly propagandizing the necessity for a certain point of view to take over. In religion, people are propagandizing the position that a certain point of view has to take over. And what happens is that we become influenced by this constant badgering in the world of points of views. And unless we have some intermediary that comes in between us and whoever is trying to propagandize us, to explain to us that Allah is without any of these opinions, without Allah is not looking for any kind of utopia on earth. Allah has set things up in an order that is already perfect, and all we need to do is blend into that. We can begin to believe that we have to alter things in order to make them better for not only ourselves, not only everybody else, but also for God. And this is just an inappropriate way of thinking. If we can remove ourselves from involvement in things, we will be able to better accomplish things. If we can remove ourselves from involvement with things, we can get things done in a more compact, easy way. Too much thinking destroys the flow of things. It is said that when an archer shoots a bow, if he aims and then shoots, he will be incapable of hitting the target in the best spot, because that gap between aiming and shooting leads to mistakes. The accurate archer aims and shoots simultaneously. He doesn't think about shooting. He just aims and then automatically shoots. The same thing happens with guns and shooting. The same thing happens with many things when we are involved with them. We need to learn how to do without doing, which means we need to learn how to do through surrender as opposed to active involvement that pushes things to go in a certain way. The methodology in this world often is that we try and force situations to come about. We try to push them into being, and we believe that the greater the force that we push with, the greater the effort that we put into things, the more chance that they will have to come about. Often, the way to get things done is to surrender and to let go. Because as long as the mind process is going on and you think that somehow you are the doer and you are going to get things done, you are interfering with the flow of things that will make everything perfect if you know how to get out of the way. There was, during the Reagan administration, Nancy Reagan led a campaign for people to stop doing drugs. And the slogan that she used was, "Just say no." Well, people made fun of that. But the reality is that you can't say no until you've stopped thinking about it. Because as long as you are obsessed with whatever the addiction is, as long as you think about that addiction, and as long as you are thinking about trying to stop that addiction, you are bringing that addiction more to the forefront of your consciousness, and the interplay with that addiction becomes more and more likely to happen again in the next moment. It's only when you surrender the addiction that the possibility comes for being able to stop. You don't stop smoking by thinking about stopping smoking. You stop smoking by stopping smoking. And that can't be understood by anyone who hasn't stopped. It can only be understood by those who have stopped. You can't lose weight until you stop eating a lot. It is a simple function. But as long as you're thinking about food all the time, you're not going to stop eating. So you need to stop thinking about food, and food has to become less and less important in your life. You're not going to be free of politics if you're constantly thinking about the state of the politics in the world. You're not going to be free of all of these things until you stop being involved with them. You're not going to be able to aim your arrow correctly until you stop thinking about shooting it. It's how it works. We become free as we let go of things. And we can't become free while we are holding on to things. We talk about the ego, and we talk about transcending the ego. There is an expression in the Tao that if we think about the ego while we're trying to transcend it, it's like chasing a tiger beating a drum. You can't beat a drum and catch the tiger. And you can't transcend the ego by thinking about the ego and how you're going to transcend it. We need to be able to learn to ignore things. We need to be able to learn to let go of things. And as we learn to let go, as we learn to surrender, as we learn to go with the flow as opposed to forcing things to happen, the more easily we go through our life and the more easily we become attuned to reality. We know that Allah's will is the overriding will in existence. And there is no way that we can go beyond the will of our Creator. We can't push things, pull things, force things beyond the will of our Creator. Now, if our Creator knows all and has everything in control, isn't it easier for us to allow that will to occur? All of the ways talk about going along with the flow, entering into the way things are, and Islam calls it surrender. In Sufism, we say surrender. We say give up to the moment, give up to the reality, give up to the truth, give up to justice, give up to compassion, give up to mercy. Don't fight it and don't create obstacles to it. Don't create obstacles to your own salvation. Don't create obstacles to the solutions in your life. And very often, effort in an inappropriate way brings about obstacles. Our effort, and we do need effort, and a hadith says that Allah loves effort. Our effort should be to surrender. And believe me, that takes a lot of effort because the natural inclination of man is to push and pull and force results. It is not the natural inclination of man to allow that which is going to happen and watch it happen in an appropriate way. We're not very good at sitting still and letting things go forward. We believe that we need to interfere to make things move. I watched my Sheikh, Muhammad Rahim Bawa Muhaiyaddeen, sit on a bed, hardly ever go anywhere, hardly ever move from that one spot, yet he got an enormous amount of things done. He was able to influence an enormous number of people sitting still and not forcing them to do anything. He always gave people options, and he understood that for somebody to be able to move forward in the appropriate way, they had to want to do it themselves, and they had to come to that place inside of themselves that allowed them to move forward. He couldn't push them into that direction. Often the following conversation would happen. Somebody would ask a question and he would give an answer, and the person didn't like the answer. So their response was, the translator mistranslated. Can we do this again? And the same answer would come. And again, they didn't like the answer. And the person would again say, the translator made a mistake in the way he asked you the question. Can we do this again? And the third time, Bawa said, do what you want. And the person would then take on the aspect that that meant that what they wanted the answer to be was in fact the answer. And that wasn't at all what had happened. What had happened was there came a point where it was understood that there wasn't going to be any movement. And to continue to repeat the question and come up with the same answer was not going to accomplish anything. So he was told, do what you want. Now, we are always going to end up doing what we want. But is what we want to do the right thing to do? And this is what we have to figure out. Why do we want to do certain things? What's the purpose for doing certain things? This is when we begin to be subject to the whims of the egocentric self and the whims of self-motive. We have what is called a nafs amara, a lower self, and that lower self's constant inclination is to satisfy our whims and our desires, no matter how petty, no matter how small, no matter how unimportant. These things become incredibly important for us because of our mind obsessions and the fact that our mind latches on to these things and continues to try to push them into a certain direction. To become at peace, to become without the stress and the anxiety of unfulfilled expectations, without the stress and the anxiety of unfulfilled desires, we have to have less desires. We have to be able to be satisfied with the situation that we are in now and allow Allah to continue to work on that situation and improve it for us, make it better for us, and allow it to reach its fruition. And we can find that in the world, if we approach things in this kind of a way, we will see that things will move out of our way and allow themselves to be accomplished. It is said that the wise man does not fear an army. He does not fear wild animals. He does not fear thievery. He does not fear because he is invulnerable to these things. When the animals approach him, they know that they shouldn't touch him. Thieves understand they shouldn't go near him because of the essence that he gives off. And because Allah hides him when he needs to be hidden and puts him in the open when he needs to be put in the open. When you reach the level where you're transcending this world, Allah moves with you, and that makes your existence in this illusory world so much easier, so much more graceful, so much more gracious, so much more flowing. But we have to go to that place where he moves with us. We have to go to that place where we move with him, where we're integrated with him. Again, the name of that state is Hakikat. Hak means reality in Arabic and is one of the names of God. So if we enter into God's reality, then we move through this world in God's reality, as opposed to this illusory world which we call real. And to understand that takes getting a glimpse of that. And after we have a glimpse of that, we can move more and more into creating that as the space that we live in. So we are constantly making choices in this world. How upset are we going to get about something? What is the limit of the amount that we're going to push something? What is the limit as to how much we're going to try and force something? When are we going to allow the natural inclination of the universe to move things for us? The universe is in constant motion. Everything is in constant motion. Just because we think we're pushing things doesn't mean we're pushing things. Things are moving on their own, and they are constantly moving on their own. We don't stop the electrons from going around the nucleus. We don't stop the planets from going around the sun. We don't stop the universes from moving in circles. They do this without our involvement. Well, in the same way, the world continues to move without our involvement. And if we can catch the flow, if we can get involved in that gracious flow, then we can move with it in the way we are intended to move. So instead of moving on our own volition, on our own ideas, we should be moving on Allah's gracious qualities. Like the dervish who whirls doesn't try to whirl on his own pattern. The pattern he's trying to create is to whirl along with the pattern of the elements and of the planets and of the universes. He's putting himself in that same movement, and he's trying to replicate that movement, putting himself there. And this is what we need to do. Without whirling, we need to be whirling. Without moving, we need to be moving. Without pushing, we need to be going along in the movement of existence that is constantly going on, whether we notice it or not. And if we can give up all of our own egocentric inclinations, if we can give up all our desire inclinations, if we can give up all of the things that we think we need, and surrender to what is allowed for us, we'll see a different world take place. And we'll notice that movement doesn't stop. Movement continues to happen. I've noticed this often in practicing law. I found that time resolved situations on their own. And if you got too involved and tried to push too hard, you could create disruptions in something that was going to resolve itself. The world is not chaotic. Existence is not chaotic. Resolution is the nature of existence. Allah wants to bring all things into a state of grace, into a state of glory, into a state of holiness. And if we allow ourselves to move with the resonance and the vibration of the world, we will be taken into a state of grace, into a state of glory, and into a state of holiness. But if we try to interfere too much in that, we will be creating veils that separate us from that. Just as when you shoot an arrow, you aim and shoot simultaneously. There's no stopping in between aiming and shooting. So there should be no stopping between ourselves and our surrender. There should be no thinking about what it is that we need to do. We're told what we need to do, and what we need to do is to get closer to God. And that doesn't take thinking, that takes being. We can get as many degrees as there are given on the state of religion and the state of God and the state of philosophy, but it doesn't mean that we've learned any truth. It just means that we are capable of arguing about philosophy. And I've watched philosophers argue, and I've watched them talk, and I've watched them go on, and even though they fill enormous amounts of time, it's like the old joke with Chinese food. After you eat, you're hungry. Well, after you listen to these guys, after they're done, you're hungry. They haven't told you anything because they have nothing to tell you. There is no resonance to their words. There is no truth to their words. But when a holy man speaks, when a man of wisdom speaks, and when the truth is told, it's satisfying. And it brings you to a place of peace. It brings you to a place of repose. There's nothing else to be said because everything's been quieted. Everything's been brought down to reality. Everything, at least for the moment, is understood. And that's what we need to be able to do for ourselves. We need to be able to bring truth to ourselves. And we bring truth to ourselves by becoming quiet and allowing the resonance of truth to permeate us, because we're always in the midst of it. It never leaves us. We're always surrounded by it. We just have to become aware of it. We have to become cognizant of it. And we have to believe it. We have to believe that Allah is with us at every moment. We have to believe that Allah is in our hearts at all times. We have to believe that Allah only wants the best for us. And then stress, fear, anxiety all goes away. And everything becomes peaceful and in repose. This is the effort that we have to put forward. This is true surrender. This is truly walking on the straight path. Ya Allah, take us all with you. Take us all on the straight path. Allow us all to see your reality. Allow our hearts to open so that we have no doubt as to you and no doubt as to your truth. Open us up so that we understand the true nature of things. Open us up so that we are at peace with ourselves and with the world. Bring us to the state where we are among the ones who are considered your friends because our inclination is towards you, our longing is for you, and our hypocrisy is gone, and there is no part of us that wishes to be separate from you. Allah, bring us into your truth. Allah, help all of us understand and know this truth. Make us merge with your gracious qualities and 99 names. Allow us to know you. Ameen, ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.